Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to do two things in extension for you today. Firstly, I want to talk about the right to self-rule, and why it is that a necessary component of this policy is a denial of the right for people to consent to be governed by a certain type of state. Second of all, I want to talk about homogeneity. Why a certain amount of homogeneity, I suppose in small doses, is a good thing. A denial of the extension just brought by the opposition speaker when he claimed that ethnodiversity and heterogeneity is always a good thing. Before I do those things, I need to make some points of rebuttal. I have four kind of underlying assumptions that have come out from the proposition side today that I want to refute. The first is this. If there's a social contract, then anybody should be able to sign it. In the words of the proposition extension speaker, Yuri, if someone makes an active agreement to sign that contract, then they should be able to. This is a crazy view of contracts, okay? A contract is a consenting agreement between two people to make obligations to one another. But that consent has to come from both sides, okay? So it's not good enough for you to just say, we set the terms of the contract and then anyone can pitch up and sign it, because that denies the right of the person making the contract to not sign it with the individual. A nice example of this would be marriage contracts, right? Am I supposed to just set out the terms of my being a husband to someone and just take the first person who comes along wishing to be my wife? I think I should be able to choose who it is that I sign my marriage contract with. Moreover, what if it is the case that I want to make a contract to sell a certain type of good that I have a finite number of? Let's say I have one mobile phone that I want to sell. I will make a contract with someone to buy this mobile phone. But that doesn't mean I just set a price and then have to sell a mobile phone to everybody who wants to buy one. I've already got one. I can only sell this one, okay? I can't just sell it to anyone who wants to buy one. Second of all, we get this thing about state borders are arbitrary. This ignores the distinction between geography and politics. Let me explain the difference to you. We agree that the boundaries that you see on maps are in many ways arbitrary, okay? In many cases, because people from my university just drew them with a ruler. We deny that political borders are arbitrary. Political borders are meaningful for the very reasons they say, the social contract. Political borders within them contain people who have agreed to live with each other in a certain way and have all consented to live together in that way. That is not an arbitrary thing. That is a border based on an agreement between people. Thirdly, this thing about no one should owe anyone else special duties. This is crazy. This denies all moral autonomy. Okay? Even if I'm the most well-meaning person, I'm probably going to be a moral monster under their law. Say I want to give loads of money to charity. Let's say I give all my income to charity, but I just don't give it to the right charity. There's charity that helps this group of people, but it just so happens that another who are terribly off, but there's another group of people who are slightly worse off. If I give all my charity to the first group, then I'm a moral monster. I haven't fulfilled my duty to help the people who need it most, okay? You deny all people's autonomy to make any moral decision for themselves under this rule. So you think that's crazy. Fourthly, this thing about people moving around as efficient will just bring around the most efficient thing. I shamelessly say there's no reason why to believe that, but moreover, I have significant reasons to believe that it will be terribly inefficient. The fact that people may do welfare tourism, moving to countries with low taxation rates when they're working, and then move to countries that give out generous pensions when they've retired. The fact that countries can't plan for the future, planning how many hospital beds, or school places, or desks and pens they can have, because they have no idea what the size of their population is going to be. Or the fact that some people may just have special connections to the land. Because Yuri got up and said, oh, if you don't like your country with too many immigrants, you can always move. We think he of all people should understand that certain people have special connections to certain bits of land that they may be unwilling to move away from. First point of extension, okay, the right to self-rule. We say this is the consequence of individual autonomy. I own this body, I own myself. Okay? I then join together with other people to form a state. I sign, in the words of the proposition, a social contract with those other people. We say that when we pool together our individual autonomy, we produce a sovereign nation. But we say that that implies that people have a freedom to live in the type of community that they want to live with, that people may contract with whomever they wish to contract with. This is why we recognise the right of secessionist movements to secede from countries that oppress them. But we say, if you acknowledge that people should be allowed to secede from an oppressing country that's bigger, then we should also give people the right to deny entry from a majority of people who come in and then vote to change all kinds of laws. Again, a kind of idea that I imagine that the proposition's second part should be particularly sensitive about here. But we also say, how about this for example? When America was divided between the slave-owning and non-slave-owning states, and they created new states, migrants from the slave-owning states, white slave owners, moved to those new states to vote in plebiscite to make them slave-owning states, so that they would have a majority of slave-owning states in the Senate. We say that this denies the right of, for example, Kansans to live in a state that bans slavery. The fact that the Kansans, under your model, have to just accept that a whole bunch of Texans and Mississippians can just move there for the day, vote in the plebiscite, and force them to be a slave-owning community is abhorrent. We think people should be able to choose the types of laws on which they live under. If you deny them that right, then you'll deny them the right to consent to their government, and in that sense deny them their autonomy. Go.
Max, there is nothing wrong with what you've just described, because what those people have done is actively move to a state that they believe to represent their interests.
Sorry, you guys keep saying this. Don't you understand that contracts have two parties, and for that contract to be a fair contract, both parties have to consent to make it? You guys are setting up this world in which I have to just write down a bunch of rules and then wait for any old jack to come along and sign it. That's a crazy view of contract, as I explained earlier. Second point of extension, right? Homogeneity is good. It's good for three practical reasons. Firstly, I want to say, this hashes with the ethno-diversity stuff that came out of the back half of the proposition. First of all, he said that ethno-diversity is great because we like share stuff, okay? That's just an argument for trade, okay? There are millions of Italians living in Britain. Well, I get to eat Italian food because, we can trade with them. So we don't think this is necessarily an argument that ethno-diversity argument holds. But there are very good reasons to buy that we want to have homogeneous societies. Homogeneous societies tend to be more willing to redistribute wealth within them. That's a sad fact of reality, ladies and gentlemen, that most people are more willing to vote for redistributionist policies if that money that they get kept is given to someone who looks a little bit like them. That's why Sweden, Norway, and Denmark have such great redistributive programs, because they're more homogeneous societies than countries than, say, Britain and the United States, generally very free market oriented. So we say there's a good reason for homogeneity if you like the poor, which you guys claim to. Second of all, we say you want to value homogeneity because this kind of policy gives you people an excuse to not give money to development aid because they're doing their bit to help people in their home country. And finally, we say homogeneity is good for democratic consolidation. When you have vastly ghettoized and segregated communities, these tend to produce very unstable democracies in which people vote along partisan lines. And for these reasons, ladies and gentlemen, I stand very proudly in opposition.